All right, everybody. Happy Monday. Happy, crappy weekend. What are you going to do? Hopefully it starts getting nicer. Get outside and enjoy some things. This week we're going to look at some graphs of sine and cosine. Gets a little challenging. Okay, gets very challenging here. I'm going to focus on cosine today and do sine on Wednesday. Okay. Probably going to be a good idea if you have multiple colors of a pencil. Okay. So if you want to get a couple different colors, I don't care if it's a pen or a pencil, um, so that way you can differentiate between the graphs. Because on one graph, we are going to draw four different graphs. Okay. And then for homework, you're going to draw five on the same. So you want to make sure that you get a different colored pencil. Okay. So the sine and cosine function can be easily graphed by considering their values. This is lesson 6. At normal multiples for starters, okay, for starters, every 90 degrees, okay, or pi over 2 radians. Due to considerations from physics and calculus, most trigonometric graph is done with the input angles in units of radians, not degrees. That is true. That is true. Okay, so when we graph them, they will be in radians, but when you go to find the values, you can use degrees. Okay, so when we look at this table, we can fill these out such that we are looking at 90, 180, 270, and 360, and negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, and negative 360. Okay. Now, the good thing with these values every 90 degrees is you can put those right in your calculator and it'll either give you 0 or 1 for cosine and sine, not for tangent. Okay. For cosine and sine, it'll give you 0 or 1. So you can do that. Okay. If you can't remember the unit circle. Okay. The unit circle every 90 degrees is a little easier to remember because 90 is 0, 1, 0. I should start with 0, is 1, 0. 180 is negative 1, 0. And 270 is 0, negative 1. Okay. And so that's how you get your x and y's. Remember, the cosine is the x and the sine is the y. Okay. So there it is. There's your x. Okay. Now, normally, what we're going to see is we're going to see the graph between 0 and 2 pi. Okay. Or one complete curve. Okay. Because these are repetitious curves. Okay. They start going and then they continue on the same thing over and over. Okay. But they want to see between negative 2 and 2, or negative 2 pi to 2 pi, which is fine. Okay. It just shows you what's going on to the left of the y-axis and to the right. Okay. So we'll start with cosine. Like I said, today we're just doing cosine. All right. So cosine, if you want, start with the ones you know. Okay. So the cosine of 0. All right. So remember, we're thinking of our unit circle, and if you got the pi plate is awesome to look at. All right. So you look at 0, and what's the x value at 0 is 1. What's the x value at 90? 0. What's the x value at 180? Negative 1. The x value at 270? 0. The x value at 360 is 1. Okay. So what I mean by the repetitious, see how it starts at an alpha value of 1 and ends at 1? Okay. And then it's going to pick up again and go 0, negative 1, 0, 1. 0, negative 1, 0, 1. And keep going on and on. Okay. Now, it's very similar going the opposite direction. Negative pi over 2. Remember, you're going down. Okay. So that's technically the same as 270. So that's 0. Negative pi, which is negative 180, same as 180, negative 1. Negative 270 is the same as 90, which is 0. And then negative 360 is the same as 360, which is 1. Okay, so those are your output values that you have. Graph both the sides. So remember, we're going to do, we'll do green. We'll do green for cosine. Okay. Normally you start at 0, okay, and put those values in. And what I will do is I'll spread this out a little bit. On this paper, it's kind of constricted. So what I'll say is I'll say that this is going to be 1 and this is going to be negative 1. Okay? So at 0, you have 1. At pi over 2, which is 90, you have 0. At pi, you have negative 1. At 3 pi over 2, or 270 is back to 0. And then at 2 pi, it's back up to 1. Okay? So when we're graphing, when it says one complete curve, we need to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plotted points. It gives me the starting and the ending and everything in between. This right here, this x-axis, is called the midline. Okay? This is the midline. Okay, we're going to refer to this as we go further along and manipulate the graph. So that's your midline. Okay? Going the other way, the negative pi over 2 is at 0. Negative pi is at negative 1. Okay? Negative 3 pi over 2 is back to 0. And negative 2 pi is back up to 1. Okay? Now, this is a curve. Okay? It's not an absolute value. So the cosine curve, this is your cosine curve. Okay? When you think of cosine curve, that's what you think about. That snapshot right there. Okay? Now look, it's repetitious, meaning that same thing over here. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just make sure it's curves. Okay? That right there is your cosine curve. Done. All right? So it says clearly label. This is cosine x. Okay? Now it says further, the domain and range, they're the same. Okay? So your domain or your x value. So your x value is negative infinity to infinity. Now the range we already talked about a little bit previously. Remember the highest and lowest. So your range goes from negative 1 to 1. Okay? After how much horizontal distance will both sine and cosine? This is the period called the period of the graph. Okay? So our period is 2 pi. Okay? And if you look up there, you can see every 2 pi, all right, it's going to repeat itself. All right, so let's go to exercise number 2. All right, and what did they give us first? So we like to explore the effects. Okay, A. So there's 4 different letters. There's an A, there's a B, there's a C, and there's a D. We talk about the A first. Okay, and the A is, we're not using the calculator. We're not using the calculator because we have to figure out when we have to know what's going on here. Okay, because if you go on to pre-calc and calc, there's not going to be any calculators when we're graphing these. So our A is the amplitude. Okay, so it looks like it gave us the regular. Yeah, it gave us the regular one. So that means that this is 1 and this is negative 1. So that's your regular curve that we just did. I just spread it out more. Okay, so you can see it. Okay, now what the amplitude means, it's just the highest and lowest that the graph goes. Okay, so I'm going to change colors. Like I said, use different color pencils or pens, whatever. So this one is going to be in green because cosine x is in black. That's the given one. Okay, so I'm in green. I don't know how to default the thickness. I wish I could. All right, so here we go. Now, what changes is the amplitude. Everything else stays the same. So that means that the highest and the lowest change. So our 3 cosine x is going to go up to 3 and down to negative 3. Okay? Yeah. All right. So down, what the heck? All right, down to negative 3. That's annoying. What is this doing here? I don't know why that's doing it. We'll try it again. Okay, so here we are. We're like this, just so you can see it. Go back to the pen. Okay, so 3, 2, negative 3. Okay, that's all that changes. So it goes here. The zeros stay the same. Okay, I'm going to pick it up a notch. The zeros stay the same. Okay, boom. There it is. If you need to pause it, pause it. I'm just looking at the time. All right, I'm almost up to 10 minutes. So there is the 3x. Now, we're going to do the next one, which is red. Okay, right here. 4. So that means it's going to go up to 4, down to negative 4. But, you see how it's a negative? That means it's a reflection over the x-axis. So instead of starting at the top, it starts at the bottom. Okay, starts at the bottom, still goes through here, goes up to 4, back to 0, down to negative 4, back to 0, up to 4, back to 0, down to negative 4. Okay? So here is negative 4 cosine x. Okay? Meaning that negative 4, okay, 4 is the amplitude. So it's really the absolute value of A tells you how high or low. The negative tells you it's reflected. Okay, so instead of the curve being like this, we reflect it and it goes like that. Okay? All right, I hope that makes sense. All right. The next one we'll do blue. And this is positive, so it's 3 over 2. Okay? So what does that mean? 1.5. So it goes up to here, down to here. Okay? Here's our first point. I hope you can see that. And then, okay, goes through 0, down to negative 1.5, back to 0, back up to positive 1.5. Going to the left, down to 0, okay, down to negative 1.5, back to 0, back up to positive 1.5. Okay? So it's like this. Okay, I know it's kind of tricky, kind of confusing, a lot going on. Okay. Purple is the last one. Okay, that's this one here. So the max and min are 2 and negative 2. It's a negative. Okay, so instead of starting at the top, it starts at the bottom. Okay, I'm going to start at the y axis. So it starts here, right? Okay, goes up to 0, goes up to 2, back to 0, back down to negative 2. Same thing the other way. I'm at negative 2, I go to 0, positive 2, 0, down to negative 2. Okay? So it's like that. Okay? So, you know, pause it, rewind it, take a look at it. All right? All we're doing is just at the curve, just the highest and lowest. And if it's negative, it's reflected over the x-axis. So this negative would look like that. Okay? Instead of the normal cosine like in this one, which would be like that. Okay? All right. Cool. So there you have it. That's the cosine. For your assignment, do number 2. Okay? Fluency number 2. So fluency, just number 2. Okay, that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cosine graphs. Okay, just like we did on the other one, because the original one was given, the cosine, and that's the same thing, cosine. Go up by ones. So go up by ones, meaning that this is 1, 2, 3. Okay, because it looks to me you got to go up to 5.5 is the highest, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So go up by ones and down by ones as well. So this would be negative 1, negative 2, and so on. Okay? All right. Take your time with these. And that's it. We're just doing sine and cosine this week. That's it. Just the basic. Very basic. All right. We'll see you next time.